So we'll suck in our guts and we'll look professional, right?
Got the official shirt on there.
You do have that, yeah. I told you we're going to be revamping that, but I keep on forgetting to talk to my designer guy by the name of Josh Hansen, who I pretty much see every week because we do the Best Darn Podcast show together now. So
yeah, that one changed. You changed the name of it.
I think Josh doesn't like consistency. I think his ADHD is we got to revamp, and I'm like, this is the third title we've had for a podcast, right? So
I love the ADHD.
That's just an anything podcast, which is kind of fun to do, where it's like get to talk about whatever's on the top of our heads. But yeah, pushing almost 500 episodes for the Addict Athlete podcast.
I know,
which is amazing.
Are you planning something big for that one?
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, we should. Huh?
I think we should.
Yeah. We're bringing in a few guests that we've had in the past that did really well. And I'm excited to like, I don't know, like I've been thinking about that, but 500 episodes, when I first heard that, I remember I was listening to Gary Vee and he's like, I won't even talk to anybody unless they have 500 podcast episodes. And I'm like, okay, how hard could that be? Dude, like 4 years later,
oh my gosh.
I'm like, oh my gosh. So
that shows consistency.
And now I don't want to talk to Gary Vee. So, heck with that. Nonetheless. All right, let's get rocking and rolling and start with the old intro. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Agents of Recovery podcast. I'm one of the two hosts here, Coach Blue Robinson, along with the co-host, the sidekick. Again, the guy who decided that he would run laps around Coach Blue here. This is Wendell Wood. How you doing this morning, my man?
Oh, I'm doing really well this morning.
Good, brother. You deserve it. You deserve it. Keeping your head clear, your body moving, and I think that the reviews we're starting to get, Wendell, kind of show that I guess we're doing something right out there. Yeah, people are listening to this here podcast, so that's a good thing, don't you think?
Yeah, I hope so. And that's the whole purpose, right? I love how you talk about turning your mess into a message.
Yeah,
I think people can relate when you're just real, you're authentic, and it's just experience. And hopefully, you can relate with something.
Absolutely.
Don't take it all, in, but maybe one little nugget or one piece here or there can help you. And if that's the case, then I feel like we're doing our job.
Yeah. So we know we have at least 2 or 3 listeners out there. So that's amazing. Right. But no, we'd love for you guys to jump on whatever platform you're listening to this on. Maybe give us a review. It's really the stars that matter, the thumbs up, whatever. It's not really for our egos. It does help get this podcast out a little bit further. It's how the algorithms in the podcast world work. So if you want to give us a little description about, I don't know, your favorite dessert, your, maybe experience you had at your last movie, I don't know. That's great, but the stars matter. So if you don't mind jumping on there, giving us a review, it definitely helps. I think the information that we put out there is very valuable. And sometimes in the sea of probably the billions of podcasts that are posted every day, sometimes these things get lost. But the Agents of Recovery is a podcast that we developed to help individuals, specifically men, kind of move through their addiction a little bit easier, maybe get some support behind them, but also for the spouses and for the loved ones around to get a maybe better feel about what these guys are going through.
Yeah.
So they can gain information as well. And I think that today is probably no different than what we've done before. You've heard this time and time again. We talk about how on the Agents of Recovery, we shoot from the hip. And I like that because you never know what you're getting rolling in this, into this. We don't really script a lot of this, which sometimes you can tell.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can't. And more often than not, we turn this conversation into something powerful. We're also going to be doing a little bit of testing while we're doing this podcast. You won't know this, but I wasn't going to tell you, but you're all guinea pigs at this moment because we're going to be putting a link in the description on this so that you can jump on and either watch from the studio or eventually be brought on as a guest and do an old-fashioned call-in shows, right? So that being said, Wendell, before we did get started, though, I said, hey, I think today what, briefly we want to discuss is something that I think most of us go through. And it doesn't just have to be with addiction. It can be in personal life and things that kind of challenge us. And that's the concept of self-doubt. Many men, many people, women, whoever, we all go through these periods of self-doubt where we think, is this even actually possible?
Yeah.
When you're looking at the mountain, the Everest that could be an addiction or a problem in life, and we look at it as, I don't know how I'm going to get up there. I don't know how I'm going to get over this. It looks too big. Self-doubt, that limiting belief, is probably one of the biggest crusher of dreams and desires and wants, because sometimes we think that trailhead to start the process is way too ominous. It's way too challenging. It's way too big. And so I've noticed that there's people that come in for help, and they kind of feel like, well, this is as good as it's going to get. Maybe this is just part of my life. Maybe being an addict, maybe being a porn addict, drug addict, whatever. Maybe that's just who I am.
Mm.
That kills me when
Yeah.
people, start to believe that, because we know that limiting belief can be eliminated. Let's jump into today's topic a little bit, brother, and talk about maybe just how do you flip the script? Where's the spark that can turn self-doubt into hope, and then maybe even, an accomplishment?
Yeah, and that's it's such a complicated thing, right? Because while we want to say, "Oh, I'm going to get super motivated. I'm going to do this," or watch a podcast, or listen to a podcast, or read a book, or whatever. Um, there's got to be a part of that spark that comes inside of you. It's got to come from inside.
Hmm.
And while we want it for other people, and we're like, "Hey, you can do this," and we try to support people and do everything else in it, at the end of the day, it has to come from inside of you. It has to come from a belief that you have, and some spark of interest. And where do you find that spark? Where do you find that thing that's like, you know what, maybe I can? And how do you flip that? Like you said, how do you flip that script? How do you say, you know what? I don't think there's a way, but maybe if I try one more time or one more thing, right?
Hmm.
That's the struggle. You say that, and immediately, I like, in my head, my heart, like, I can just relate so much to that feeling.
Oh
Like, I
man.
relate so much to that feeling. I was, in my addiction and struggling, and finding, years of, like, I say sobriety, but it's like, what is it? Like a dry drunk type thing, where it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I wasn't acting out in my addiction or anything else like that, but at the same time, I wasn't living. Like, I wasn't, like, really just being fully invested and understanding, like, my emotions, and just coming from a place where I was able to express those emotions and feel safe to
Yeah.
do that, right? And so when you say that, like you said, it just tugs at my heart, because I am that person. I was that person. I've felt there. I've been there. I've sat in that just darkness, thinking, you know what? I'm just going to continue doing the next thing.
Right.
No matter what that is. It's just, I'm just going to continue doing that. And at the end of the day, I'm just going to resign. Like, it's going to be okay. Right. I mean, like, this is better that, that saying, the devil, is better than the one you don't, right? Just like, because we get, it's so weird to even think about it, but, like, you get comfortable in being uncomfortable. You just
Exactly.
get that comfort of, like, oh my gosh, I'd rather just sit in here and the pain and just, like, the numbness, rather than attempt to get up here this high, or to try to get to that next peak or wherever it is, because I know when I fall, and in my brain I'm like, I'm gonna fall, right?
Hmm.
But I don't want to risk all that stuff, because it's going to hurt when I fall. And so rather than risk the hurting down here, I'm not going to even attempt the peaks and the happiness, because that happiness, in my brain says, okay, yeah, that can only last for so long.
Right.
And then naturally, that pain
Hmm.
is going to be there. It's going to come through. And so rather than, like, worry about, like, I don't want to be down lower than where I am right now. And in order to do that, I just have to stay where I'm at, and I can't get better.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, it's
No,
just
it
like,
does.
it's such a strange concept.
It is, because self-doubt often masks like so many insecurities we have, right? It masks the fear of failure. It masks the fear of being judged. It masks the fear of wasting effort, fear of discovering that we're not really who we thought we were. There's so many of these things. And these things typically, Wendell, as you know, they are instilled in us at such a young age. I hate to say this, and we talk about this so much, but these self doubts, these limiting beliefs, these are all planted when we're young, like it or not. Again, I've talked about this a million times. I'm 50 years old, and there's still these limiting beliefs I have because they were told to a 6, 7, 8 year old, 5 year old. And it's kind of a crazy thing because you feel like you're literally stuck. That fear of failure is kind of an interesting one. So that's the why try. The fear of being judged, that happens a lot in communities like what we're kind of affluent with here.
Mhm.
Maybe I don't measure up. Maybe it's, I'm not as righteous or holy or, able as most men. But that discovery of maybe thinking that we're not who we authentically could be. So why try? Like, this happens a lot with behavioral addictions, Wendell. Like when you start looking at pornography and things, we are indoctrinated at a very young age, specifically in the religious culture that we've both kind of experienced, that it is such a horrific sin that, of course, you're the bottom of the barrel, right?
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if anyone's ever come out and said that. The feelings exist, but no one's ever like been labeled you are the worst human being that's ever walked the face of this earth because you have an addiction. There could be things that rotate around that. There could be assumptions that are made, but like we usually place these labels on ourselves, the guilt, the shame, and then when we act out, before help or even when we have relapses, there's a concept of like, well, they're right.
Yeah.
So I might as well just be this. For you, man, did you ever feel like being stuck intensified that pressure of like, I'll never be as righteous or as holy or as healthy or, as I could be because of this? So why try?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, like, that's like exactly where I was because I
Mm,
felt, especially in the world we live in today, where you have social media, you have all these things, right? It's not just this, hey, my neighbor across the street. It's not just the guy I go to work with, right? It's like, oh no, I got to put on this persona for everybody else, right? And you always judge your like, at least for me, my brain is like, okay, I always see my worst qualities, right? I always see these things. Oh, I fell short here, or I fell short here, or I'm struggling with this. But what do I compare that to? I compare that to this manicured, like, set up Photoshop version of everybody else's best
yeah,
days, right? Because that's the only things that
good
we
point.
post on social media, and we see all these things. And the things we go to and that we see, like, they have to be worth celebrating, right? Because if it's not a big event or something like worth celebrating, we usually don't post it to social media. We don't put it out there, right? And so me struggling in those beliefs and those limiting beliefs, like, oh my gosh, if somebody truly knew all of the stuff about me and all the things I've
Hmm.
done, like, they're going to judge me. And not only that, like, how can I compare myself and that negative self-talk and like this belief that I'm not good enough and that I don't measure up? How can I compare my worst to what I perceive is their normal, right?
Right.
Because my brain says, "Oh, well, that's everything they post is this way. So they must be like clear up here." And I'm clear down here.
So let me ask you this question. I've worked with several people on this that had this mindset that, what, it's become such a vice in my life. It's become such an outlet. And instead of my wife or my loved ones kind of fighting against it or whatnot, um, they're okay with it. And so they become okay with it. But I'm like, then why are you in my office right now? Right. Like I've heard people say that like it's just my coping mechanism. But then why are you here?
Yeah.
Because if you're cool with it and you don't have any sense of like remorse or responsibility or desire to quit, then why are you here? I've heard so many people say that as they're sitting in my office in individual therapy. I'm thinking, then how cool are you with this, right?
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't matter what barriers we place on there. You could get internet filters. You could do the Utah state law. They passed a law a few years ago that says you have to enter your age and verifications and personal information to access pornography sites. But there's these things called VPNs, and there's these other things. I mean, there's so many accesses to it that it's like it comes down to a personal choice. If your personal choice is you're cool with it, then why are you sitting here, right? I don't think anyone's ever just cool with it. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh,
Why
yeah.
do we
Yeah.
buy into that? Is that part of the limiting belief? Like,
I
might as well
think
just
it is.
accept it?
I think it's self-deception.
Mm,
I mean, honestly, I truly believe that that's what it is. It's not being able to, in our mind, say, okay, just being able to justify it in our minds, right? There's a part of us that's like, okay, I'm okay with this. And if my spouse says that she's okay with this or whatever, then okay, well, then it should be okay. But then there's still that internal part of you that's like, wait, it's not really okay. There's something missing.
yeah.
Like you said, you can put filters on things, you can do all this stuff. Um, and you can say, hey, don't look at it. And try to again kind of go back to like, oh, I'm going to try to avoid every trigger. Right.
Mm,
But how long does it work? I mean, you could be sitting here, you could be sitting in the complete darkness and have nothing can't see anything, can't do anything, and you can be triggered by a smell, by a sound, by a memory,
an
anything like
environment,
that.
anything. Yeah.
Anything, right? It can take you back, and that's the incredible part about our brains and the way our bodies were designed, is that the smallest thing can take us there. And so you can say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do all these things to make it so that it's impossible for me to act out or to see pornography or whatever it might be." And that's not enough, because
Hmm.
you're really not
Yeah.
treating the problem.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, somebody who comes into your office and says, "Hey, my wife's good with this, blah, 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 so I don't have any problems." And you say, "Well, then why are you here?" Because they know that that's not the problem. At the end of the day, that's not the problem. The act out
Hmm.
behavior, that is, I mean,
Yeah.
does it have problematic consequences and everything else associated with it? Of course it does, right? Of course it does. But the problem's deeper. The problem is, okay,
Hmm.
what is causing you to go to feel like you need that still to feel regulated? Because when we go to those things, when we go to pornography, when we go to overeating, when we go to, you know, drugs or alcohol, we're just trying to regulate. We're feeling
Yeah.
dysregulated. There's something in us that's not right. And so that person coming in saying, "Oh yeah, she's okay with it," blah blah, and it's like we've just resigned ourselves that, like, rather than fighting this battle and saying, and have all the tension surrounding it and the arguments and everything else like that, we're just going to say, "Okay, just do it," and
Mm.
then we avoid the contention. But does that change truly who you are inside? Does that change what you're really struggling with, and that pain and that
Mm.
trauma inside of
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
that's causing you to go to that? It doesn't.
No,
It doesn't.
it doesn't. But that's the thing. You brought that up, and it kind of sparked a thought in my head. And I've never really looked at it this way. But can that story then that we tell ourselves, can that be labeled shame? Actually, be mistaken for motivation? Does that make sense? Shame and motivation. When you were talking about that, sometimes I think shame can be such a catalyst that it looks like motivation. Like you stay stuck in that cycle of like, obviously I deserve this,
Mhm.
right? And I deserve to be put down and I deserve to think that I'm not going to make it. And that can turn into negative motivation. I've never really looked at it that way. You can stay stuck in that because who are you without it, right? We've talked about that before. I'm curious if I've explained that correctly because I've never really noticed it that way. But I think sometimes that shame can definitely look like motivation. And we have to segment it and get very clear with what it is and what it isn't, right? Like
Yeah.
it sounds kind of funny to be motivated to stay stuck in shame, but obviously you're getting something out of it,
You are.
right?
You are. It's so crazy. You said that, and I was like, "Well, no, is it really that way?" But then
If it's not, tell me because I love it.
no,
Yeah.
because
But you tell me. What do you think?
it takes me back to the other thing that you teach and that you've taught me, is like faith and fear are the same thing.
Yeah.
But, they're both a belief in something.
Hmm.
One is a belief, in faith, a belief that, something good can happen, something positive, right? You can use it to, like, kind of like a motivation, right? And the fear is a belief that something else bad, or something else, a lie or something, is triggering you, right? So at their core belief, at their core, they're the same thing. It's just, do we choose fear or do we choose faith?
Yeah.
But just like you said, that shame and motivation, you can say the same thing. They're the
Mhm.
same thing. One is a motivation for good, right? And you're motivated and you get this burst of energy to do this, but that shame does the exact same thing, but in the opposite way, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that shame is like, oh, yeah, you're not good enough. You can't do this. You can't change. So it motivates us to stay stuck
Mhm.
where that motivation or the newest, you know,
Mhm.
video on YouTube or whatever it is, or the clip that we see is like gives us that briefest moment of, oh, that motivates me. I'm going to do a
Mhm.
positive change versus a negative change, right? But
Yeah.
but at the same time, they're both, hey, do you stay stuck or do you move
To
forward?
move forward, you get to choose. I think that that's when that self-doubt creates a loop, if you will, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, the doubt reduces action. I think self-doubt, less action creates more stagnation, which means you're just kind of sitting idle, and then stagnation confirms the doubt. I'm not doing anything. I'm still stuck here. And then that guy's going to feel like he's so stuck into that mire, he's not getting out at all. And I think that, like, that shows up in areas of avoidance, right? Like, if we procrastinate, I'll start when I feel ready. Avoid the conversations, the action steps. There's so many, I think, offshoots to what self-doubt does, that I don't know if we give it the proper respect that it deserves. Like, does it make sense?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
we kind of think, well, that's just who I am.
Yeah.
Self-doubt, man. And even external, like, support, when someone says you can do this, I think it's hard for someone to truly believe that when they're stuck in it so deeply. Like, but you say that, but you don't know.
Yeah.
Even if you've had the same addictions and whatnot, like, well, it was easy for you. Someone could see your success that you've had and they could say, well, Wendell, was easy for you.
Yeah.
But they weren't there during the darkest times.
No.
They weren't there during the choice of, like TJ talked about on the Addict Athlete podcast, about he was just laying on the couch
Yeah.
and he's like, anything I'm going to do except for laying on this couch could potentially lead to a relapse. So I'm just sitting here.
Hmm.
They don't see that part. They see Wendell now on the podcast and on in husband material and being, a triad leader. They don't see Wendell when he first rolled into the Springville office being like, kind of need some help here.
Yeah.
So how do we give self-doubt, sounds so weird, the proper respect that it deserves, that it needs?
Mm. It's so hard because like you said, we are just, I think, conditioned.
Do we realize that's what it is?
Yeah. I don't think we do.
Yeah.
I don't think we do. I think we're just comfortable. We're just there's some comfort
I
in
still
there.
do this, Wendell. I still
There's
self-doubt,
comfort in there. Oh yeah,
you
all
know?
the time.
Talking to a guy before we started about running and stuff, and he's like, "You're gonna be able to run great. You're coming from 5,000 feet of elevation. Come down here to sea level." I'm like, "Yeah, but you've probably been running more than I have lately, right?"
Yeah.
That's a self-doubt
Yeah.
comment.
Oh, it
So,
is.
do we give it the proper respect it deserves?
Well, it's like, okay, so why do we do that? Why do we make those self-doubt things, right? Why do we make those claims, or why do we try to downplay ourselves or play small?
Mhm.
It's because we have a fear that, you know, what if we fail? And like, what those emotions around failing and just like, oh, well, if I don't get my hopes too high,
That's
then
a
I'll
big
just be
one.
stuck here, right?
Mhm.
Or then if I don't risk too much, then I can't hurt too much,
Exactly.
right? And so it's like, if I get my hopes up here and I'm like, hey, we're going to do this and all excited, but my past says every time I've done that, I've failed or something has come up and you know what? I don't deserve that, right? And
Mhm.
it's like this belief that like, okay, well, it for me, it all goes back to our past. It goes back to trauma. It goes back
Mhm.
to learned experiences, right?
Yep.
Because we have proof. We think, right? In our brain, we have proof that like the last time I tried this, I failed.
Yep.
And we look at things as a failure rather than,
Absolutely.
hey, is it good? Is it bad? We'll see,
We'll see.
right?
Why
You
make the
say,
judgment now until you've
yeah,
seen
until
it?
you've made it through that.
Mhm.
And you talked about a mentor and a friend in David Clark, and I've been going back and listening to some of his
Oh, yeah.
podcasts you've done with him, and listening to one of his books right now, and just like that philosophy of, is it good? Is it bad? We'll see.
We'll see.
And we get stuck so much about thinking that, oh, just because, something is positive, then that means it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Or because something hard happened, oh, that means it's bad.
Mm.
But something bad, like, like you said, my addiction and my divorce and everything else, that kind of led me to a point where it's like, you know what? I'm down here. You always talk about hitting rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
And, they're like, oh, I hit rock bottom. Well, you can always go deeper.
Oh,
Right? You
yes.
can always go,
Most people pickaxe down
right.
deeper.
You're like,
Mhm.
oh, I hit the bottom, but no, I can make tunnels under there. Right. Um, but in some ways, like in that moment at my lowest, when I'm like, my life is over, like everything I had imagined, like, and going through a divorce and breaking up all these things, my family and, all the chaos surrounding that. Like you said, that moment when I came to you in Springville and I'm like, that letter, I have to go back and see if I have
Mm.
that letter that I emailed you, but it's
Yeah.
like just that depths, like the depths of, I mean, let's be honest, the depths of hell.
Yeah.
It felt like I
You were
was in the
there.
depths of hell
Mhm.
and like I had nothing, like everything was going wrong and everything was, pulled out from underneath me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I look back now and say, at that time I was like, oh, it's bad, it's terrible, like all this stuff's happening. And yeah, that was bad. It's hard, it's difficult. And now I can look at it and say, it's changed me, it's transformed me, it's allowed me to go places where I never would have gone had I been stuck in that comfort, the comfort of discomfort,
Oh, man, yeah.
right? I mean, there's this comfort in discomfort, right?
Mhm.
This comfort in like knowing that, yeah, I may not be happy, I might be here, but at least I know where I'm at,
Mhm.
right? And so,
Yeah.
was it bad in that moment? I thought my world was ending, and yet now I can look at it as it was a trigger point, or it was a thing that needed to happen the way it happened in order for me to be where I'm at today.
I love it because I think that's where recovery starts. I think recovery for this kind of stuff, it starts when separating your identity from the current circumstance, right? Like, I may be doing this, the circumstance of, but that's not who I am, correct?
Yeah.
That state of being stuck is not a permanent identity,
Mm-mm.
and I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit there. So maybe questioning and having a shift about, like, what's wrong with me, to what pattern am I in right now? It's about, you're talking about being curious
Mhm.
about why this is happening. And I think those small wins kind of start building trust. There's so many times when someone will say, well, I've been able to avoid pornography for 4 days, 5 days. And then I had a slip, and I'm like, that's freaking amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, we think it's all or nothing, and it's
Yeah.
not. You have to be able to, like, give yourself credit for the small victories too,
Oh,
right?
so true, so true. And I've been stuck there, right? I've been in that place where, like, yeah, I was go all this time, and I had, a year of sobriety or 2 years or whatever, 2 days, 3 days, but then, like you said, I had a relapse or I had a slip. Sobriety lost its purpose, and immediately I think, oh, I'm back at starting all over again.
And you're
I'm
not.
starting all over again.
Eh,
All that stuff that I learned, I got to throw it all out
We've
because
been
it didn't
trained.
work.
We've
It
been
didn't
trained.
work.
That's the way it is. If
100%.
you relapse and you're on step 7, you start over again.
Yeah.
What are you going to learn new, right? Like, you don't start all over, do you?
No, no, you don't. And it's that mindset of all or nothing,
Hmm.
and that mindset of
Black or white
black
thinking.
or white.
It'll
It's
get
good or
you.
bad, right?
Hmm.
And how can I be making progress if I'm still going to my act out behaviors?
Yeah.
Like that in our brains, it doesn't compute that way. And I
Hmm.
know a lot of times, our loved ones, when they see that, they're like, oh my gosh, like he's going to that again, going, and it's like, well, everything they did to get up to that point is discounted. It's like, well, obviously that didn't work.
Yeah.
And rather than looking at it as a failure, which is what I love that Drew teaches in Husband Material, don't look at it as a failure. Look at it as feedback. You're like, what can I learn from this? Right?
Huge.
Where is you talk about another mentor all the time, Davey. And it's like, he says, where is the learning?
Yeah.
What is the learning? What am I supposed to learn
Hmm.
from this moment? And if we can go into something and say, hey, you know, I had 3 days where I was able to stop looking at pornography, or I was stop drinking or whatever it might be, and celebrate that and say, dance, like yell, scream, like, yeah, and celebrate that rather than like, hey, I just messed up again.
Yeah.
Right. And like you said, go back to that thing. Okay. So let's be curious. Let's go to that trailhead. This is a trailhead. It's something came up. Okay. So now, what what was I feeling in that moment? What was I missing? And if you can kind of go back, rewind the tape, right?
Right.
And look at some of the things that were happening around you. And if you can't figure it out for yourself, call a friend or somebody or a therapist, a mentor, somebody. Call us, right? I mean,
Mm.
call me. And it's interesting because we had in one of my triad groups, we had just I was on a call yesterday, and one of the guys talked about like, you know what? I've had all this success, I'm doing all this stuff, and I feel like I've made so many breakthroughs. And he's like, and yet yesterday, I really struggled and I acted out again.
Mm.
And one of the guys on the phone says, oh, he's like, yeah, and it's like, it's kind of like we talk about, that with the next race, right? You
Yeah.
go to this race and you have this success and you're doing all this training and you get all there and you get to the top and you have success in that race. And then
Now
what
what?
happens? You have that
Yeah.
post race
Yeah.
depression, right? Or
Yep.
that,
Now what? Yeah.
because you're like, oh, I reached this but I can't stay up there every time. You
No,
can't stay
you
up there.
can't
You have
stay
to
on
come
top
back
of
down.
Everest
Yeah.
for very long. You've got to go up there, have the experience, and get your fanny down.
Yeah. Go up there, have the experience, celebrate, right? Celebrate. It's okay to celebrate
Mhm.
stuff. It's okay to celebrate. Hey, I have 3 days. It's okay to celebrate that. And then if you mess up, you're like, okay, well, I wonder what that was about. And rather than taking that as failure, we look at it as feedback and say, that means I was not feeling regulated again, or I was feeling dysregulated. And so I went to this familiar behavior, which would allow me to feel like I have some sort of regulation or, some sense of normalcy or
Mhm.
whatever, we call it at that point. Um,
Brilliant.
but if we can look at that and say, okay, what was the missing link? What was the missing piece? What was I
Mhm.
feeling? Was I feeling unheard? Was I feeling unseen? Was what was happening around me? Do that autopsy, right? You go back
Absolutely.
and you're like, okay, well, what kind of led me up to that? And then as we're doing that, if we're curious enough and truly are curious about that, then we can go back and we can say, oh, and we'll see the patterns.
Oh, for
You'll see the
sure.
patterns. You'll see the things that like, oh, my boss said this, or this person said this, or this trigger happened. And rather than like letting my emotions out and talking about it, I went back to that feeling, that inner child that got stuck at that age of 6 or 7 when they were told, don't do
Don't
that,
do that. Mhm.
And so that burden, I felt that burden that was placed on me at that young age, it came out again. And so that's what led me to it. And so then you're like, okay, I can learn from that. I can deal with that. I think the problem is when we don't dissect those things, when we're not curious about them,
Mhm.
we just look at it as, oh, well, that's who I am.
That's who I am.
You know,
Absolutely.
that's who I am.
Never works.
That's my identity. It's not a part of me, which is what it
What we
really
talk
is.
about.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is a part of you, you know, but there's all these other good parts too.
It's not who you are.
Yeah.
I think that action often comes way before confidence in these kind of things. Like usually people wait to feel confident before moving, before choosing something else. Like I've got to develop some confidence to avoid it, to take action. The opposite I believe is true. You have to act in order to build confidence, don't you think? I mean, in practice, confidence kind of grows after action proves that there's safety, that there's a life after, that there's a capability of. And I think that kind of gets us stuck, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? We always wait for the cart to get put before the horse, and it turns into, what come first, the chicken or the egg. And I've always talked about how it takes 5 seconds of courage to do anything, right? People are deathly afraid of public speaking. And if you get up there and you take a deep breath and you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that action then builds the confidence, because once you're there, it's go time. I think we have a hard time remembering that. Like we think that we have to have the confidence to be able to avoid before the action of doing something in lieu of. And that's not the case, is it?
No, it's so far from the truth. It's so far from the truth. It's like you said, how do you become a runner? How do you become a runner?
You have to start running.
You have to start running, but do you start like, I mean, we look at a
No,
little
you
kid.
start walking.
Yeah. I have well, she's about 9 months old right now, my granddaughter. And I look at her and, even from 2 months ago when she was just barely like, I have a video that my daughter-in-law sent me, and she's like kind of like starting to crawl, and she's like one leg isn't quite all the way extended, and that's kind of, and then she tips over and falls over on her side, right?
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't start just crawling. She doesn't start just walking. We have to take the small steps. But the problem is we're like, okay, and I know this from my perspective, and my addict thinking is like, well, if I can't go straight to running, then I can't do it, right? If it's not something big, then it's not worth my effort. It's not worth my time.
Yeah.
And so we get stuck in that place where, oh, well, it's just walking.
Yeah.
It's just
walking isn't running.
It's not running,
Mhm.
right? I remember when I got involved with Addict Athlete, and you're like, oh yeah, well, we like to do these runs and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not a runner.
Not a runner.
That's not my identity.
Uh-huh.
It was in high school, but that's not me
You
anymore.
said that too. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was in high
It
school.
was in high school. I ran track and cross country, but that's like all these limiting beliefs, all these burdens have been placed on me. And it's like, oh, well, you got hurt. You had this knee surgery. You had all these other things. Well, you can't do that anymore because you're damaged.
Yeah, you're broken.
You're broken. Like, so how dare you think you can be a runner?
Like, think about that. Oh, you have pornography addictions. You have substance addictions. You're broken.
How dare you think you have worth? How dare you think you have value? Like all this stuff you're doing, like you're not a good person.
Yeah.
You're a terrible person.
I think someone's going to want you.
Exactly. And so then we just believe
it.
I was going to say a stronger word, but it is a good word. We believe our own BS, right? At that point, we believe all the negative talk around us. We believe all these things and these burdens that are placed upon us and that we're placing upon ourselves, saying we're not worthy.
Absolutely.
We're not worth it because my actions disqualify me from deserving to be happy.
Yeah.
And then you just sit in that because you're like, yeah, it's proof, yeah, of course. No, I don't deserve to be happy. I deserve to be where I'm at. I deserve to be stuck because of my actions.
Yeah.
Which couldn't be further from the truth.
Perfect. So listeners, I'm going to give Wendell some rapid fire questions, the ones that I typically ask when I bump into this. And I've asked these to a few people just recently. That's why they're right here in my notes. And I want to know how you would answer them. And you can answer them as you are now, or you can answer them for when we first met. But the first one, that I ask after I get a real clear sense that there's self-doubt kind of at the helm of this problem. And the first question is, well, what are you really afraid of will happen if you try, if you give it a shot, if you really do give it an investment to stop the pornography, to create this other life? What are you afraid might happen? How do you think people answer that question? Because when we think of what am I afraid will happen if you stop using pornography, it kind of throws them off guard because they look at it as that being the goal. So what do you mean? Why would I be afraid?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You don't get to use that as a crutch anymore.
Yeah.
You can't use that as an excuse anymore.
Yeah.
And I found that to be very true. My own recovery included that when I took away the excuse to use, there was no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of spooky.
Yeah.
Who am I without this trauma? Yeah. Who am I without this abuse? Who am I without this pornography addiction? So what are we afraid of might happen if you stop?
You're going to have to be vulnerable.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
You're going to have to feel emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to sit in uncomfortable feelings.
We have to have some hard conversations with people.
Yeah. And you can't avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have to deal with life on life's terms rather than saying, oh, hey, this hard thing happened. And you're going to have to say, wow, that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay that it was hard. And it's okay that I'm crying. It's okay that I feel all these emotions that forever I was told you can't feel those emotions, right? That's a sign of weakness.
Absolutely.
And so
that happens a lot.
We're afraid. We're just afraid that, like, how can I live without this crutch?
Mm-hmm.
How can I live without this stuff? And while I hate it, and there's nothing, like, if I could just get rid of this one thing, my life would be great. right? And we think that, and it's just like, oh, just take it away from me, or help me do something, like have an operation to rip it out of me, right? Something like that. Because if I could just get this one thing, then that would solve all my problems.
But no, I don't think people think about that much. Like, what am I afraid will happen if I do this? I mean, I had no idea where my life was going to go when I stopped using. I stopped using it on February 9th, 1996. It's the last time I used any substance because I had such a crazy experience, a very scary rock bottom experience that I was like, I'm done. That was very scary. I mean, we got close to not being here. That's how scary it got for me. I could no way, shape, or form tell you that this was where my life was going to end up. I mean, there's no way, man. Like, and to a certain degree, if I would have been terrified of sitting here with you today. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
And I probably would have avoided
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
Does that make
100%.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt.
And so when we ask ourselves that question, listeners, it's not just to like, oh, that's a cool little time pillar for a podcast. It's a very dead serious question. What are you afraid of by allowing those vices, those addictions to no longer be utilized to help your coping mechanisms?
Yeah.
It's what does your self-doubt say about you? That's a hard one, man. When I ask that question to people, like, what does it say about you? It does. It makes me say, well, that I'm weak and all this. Yeah, but if it says that about you, why do I want that? My self-doubt has limited so many things, even things like today, right? There's still things I'm like, man, is that going to happen? What part is fact and which part is an assumption? That I'm an addict. Uh, That's an assumption,
Yeah.
right? That's not a reality. Like you said, it's part of us, not who we are. Where am I waiting for certainty that never arrives? Like we're waiting for these guarantees, right? And then what's one action that I can take in the next 24 hours to ensure that I'm making some kind of progress, even if it's delaying viewing an hour, even if it's, you know, raising the white flag of surrender. There's something that we can do right now that would limit our follow through.
Mhm.
Most people, again, they wait for that confidence, the boost, but it takes action. You have to do something. That's why I say movement equals healing.
Yeah.
You have to do something.
Yeah.
It's a lot at once, but what are your thoughts?
No, I think you're spot on with that. It's the idea of we want to see we want to be where we want to end up,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We in the moment, the only thing we think of is like, no, I want to be completely out. I want to be free from this. I want to be free from, all these impulses and, desires to be like, completely done with this. I want to be where you're at 20 years sober, right? Or
Mhm.
30 years sober. I want to be there. I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy who's sitting in the room who, has just got his 7 years sober chip, right? That's the guy I want to be. But what you don't see is in order to be that place and to be in that recovery, man, there were a lot of dark days. There were a
There
lot of
were.
pain. There was a lot of suffering. And the only way you get there is by stringing 1 second at a time to 10 seconds to 30 seconds and to be able to sit in that discomfort and to say, okay, what am I doing? How am I feeling? To be present in that moment. Because, like you said, I think we get stuck in this faith and fear, right?
Mhm.
We choose the fear. We choose the fear because there's less risk.
It's so natural.
There's less risk.
Mhm.
Because what happens if
We
what
don't have to act then. We don't have to
But-
do anything. You can just
but-
be.
what happens if I do everything and I do everything possible and I'm like and I don't succeed?
Mhm.
Well, then that means that there's never any hope for me ever.
No. So why
Like,
try?
why try?
There it is.
It
Why
is.
try?
Why?
Self-doubt is stuck in men usually because it comes from that fear, the shame, the pressure, and it's stuff that we self-inflict.
Well, and it's because we see success as black or white.
Mhm.
We see it as like, oh, I gotta be 100% here. I have to be the 30-year sober guy. I have to be that. And that's the only way I can define success.
Mhm.
Let's get rid of that expectation. Why do we have to have that
Jeez,
expectation?
You're right. That 30-year-old guy, I've met that 30-year sober guy, and I'll never forget this. It's why I started to kind of like look at the 12 steps in a different light. Now, like warning, right? Like I'm not dinging the 12 steps. They're fantastic. They work for who they're designed for, and that's great. But that's not the only path. But when I was sitting in a 12-step meeting years ago, there was a dude that came in, and he's like, I want to share. He's like, I've been clean now for like 12, whatever years. He had a lot of years under his belt. And he's like, right now, my son is home celebrating his like 8th birthday or something. But my recovery is so important that I have to be here tonight. And he was trying to champion himself as if that act showed us the dedication he has to his addiction recovery. When there's an 8-year-old kid that probably wants nothing more than to have his dad there.
Yeah.
But instead, his dad has to choose this. I'm thinking, that's not a choice anymore. Sir, you've crossed addicted and you didn't even know it.
Yeah.
We have to understand that like self-doubt doesn't mean you have to be diehard. It means that recovery can come from those small actions, rebuilding trust within yourself. I think the key shift again is to look at, well, what can I do next? As you've mastered a task in the column below. I think that we look at it as a growing process, not as an all or nothing.
Yeah.
Correct?
It's so awesome that you're talking about this and just saying that. And it takes me back to this call that we had on this triad just last night. And the guy, he was sharing some of this stuff and what was kind of going on. And he was super vulnerable. And there was just like this part where he's just like, I feel like I've made so much progress. I've done all this stuff. And then, and then I'm struggling too. And it's like, and, I kind of jokingly, but not joking, said, "Oh, wait, you mean you're human?" And he's like, "Wh- and then he starts laughing and he's like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "So you're human? Like, you're not perfect? You're not like, oh, hey, I'm perfect now because I've done." But that's what we do.
That's what we do.
We put this level of perfection up there as
Yep.
that's the only thing we can attain.
Yep.
And if we're not perfect, then we're broken.
Then why try?
Yeah. And
Yep.
so it's like, and so I mean, you're human. You're human. Congratulations, you're human. You have human desires. You have these things. And it just reminds us that, hey, you know what? There's more we can learn.
Yeah.
It's a feedback. And when we look at it as feedback rather than like, oh, my actions, that makes me who I am. That defines me,
Exactly.
right?
That's
And
who
we
I
can
am.
do that.
Yep.
There's this quote that just popped into my head too, and I just saw it the other day, of all things, on Facebook. Um, but it says, it's talking about shame, kind of what we
Mhm.
talked about, and in it says, working with my shame has been allowing myself to feel well with being vulnerable. It says to own that, oh, this hurts, and that I'm not superwoman.
Mm.
I'm actually human, and it's profoundly holy to be human.
Mm.
If we think about
Man.
that,
Jeez.
what bigger compliment could I have given that man last night when I said, wait, you're human?
You're human.
There's holiness there. The human experience is one that we're here to experience. They call it an experience for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
If everything was guaranteed, then what's the
It'd be
purpose?
boring as all get out.
What's the purpose?
Yeah.
You talk about maximum security, right?
Mhm.
Like our goal is like, oh, I want to be financially secure. I want to be emotionally secure. I want all
Job
this stuff.
security.
Job security.
Mhm.
And what is maximum security? It's usually behind bars.
Prison.
Yeah.
Mhm. You're in your own prison.
Yeah. And so like if everything was guaranteed, what's the purpose? We won't find joy. We can't experience that joy without knowing what pain feels like.
Mhm.
And when we get stuck in the middle and we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable because we fear failure, right? And we see it as like, oh, it's black or white, or my expectation is I have to be perfect in order to be making progress.
Yeah.
And we just put so much emphasis on that perfection and like doing everything the right way and the way somebody says we're supposed to be doing this.
Mhm.
It just sets us up for that failure. It sets us up for like that mentality of like, I'm not even going to try because I know I can't get there. But guess what? That means you're human. Nobody can get there.
Nobody can. So that's what there's a little YouTube video out there that everyone should watch. It's called The Butterfly Circus. It's about 25-minute video.
Yeah.
It's a little short film, and you'll understand why we're promoting that when you go see it. But there's a quote in there that I love talking about: the greater the struggle, the more glorious the triumph. And it's like, well, there's a reason why you're going through this. And I don't think everything has to be assigned a reason, like but I do believe that like there's a reason why this is so hard for you. Because when you come out through the other side of this, there's nothing that can like get you back off track. I mean, since you've overcome the most uh, terrible burden that life's ever thrown at you, and now look, now you have the ability to do the same, to pass the message, to carry it, to influence the next. I mean, it's a big deal. And some people may not want that.
Mm-mm.
And so you may try to play small.
Yeah.
But if you do, then you'll never be able to reach the potential of being able to be free, to be what we call it, like the agent. You'll be a victim, right? I mean, the whole precedent of this podcast is you're an agent to your recovery. You're no longer a victim of addiction. It's a big deal. No one wants to be a victim to anything. But you could be a victim to pornography. You can be a victim to substance use. You can be a victim to your circumstances.
Yeah.
But why not be an agent?
Yeah.
One that can like get to a point where it's used as a foundation to build strength instead of digging the hole of death.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, earlier when we talked about the whole agents versus victims. A victim is supposed to be a temporary state.
It is.
Right. It's supposed to be this time when it's just super temporary, and you're supposed to be able to heal from that. You're supposed to be able to come back from that. And you look at an agent and you look at the different definitions for agent, and an agent, if you can turn that around, you can turn that mess into a message. An agent is somebody who can advocate for somebody else. You think of like an agent for a sports player, right? There's somebody who advocates for somebody else. They're acting in behalf of somebody else, and you can help somebody else get to where they couldn't get if you're, without an agent, right?
Yeah.
Because they know different things, they're experienced through different things. And so if we can turn that agent, that victim mentality into an agent, and we can allow that to then help other people get out of that place where we were. Yeah, it takes me back to that question that you asked, right? What are you afraid of if you can get rid of this? Like, what are you like, if you can get rid of this, what's that fear? Like, what is life going to be like? And, you said, well, if, your 20-year-old self was like, oh, if it saw what you're doing today, it'd be like scared. And it's like, yeah, I don't know that I want that.
Yeah,
right.
Pump the brakes.
You asked that question. I'm like, my fear is like, oh, well, my fear is like, what happens if somebody finds out that I've struggled with pornography my whole life? My fear is, what happens if somebody knows that I was sexually abused? What happens if, they know all these bad things and they know my worst days? My fear is that if that all comes out, then I won't be able to handle it and I won't be able to judge it. And that's kind of like real honest, like, you said, what would you have felt like back in Springville in that first event and stuff? And now I look at it now, and if that person in that point saw me where I'm at today on a podcast and talking to other men all across the country, and even, on other continents, through husband material and stuff, and is sharing those deepest, darkest things and saying, hey, this is where I was at. And now I can become that agent to try to help them understand that you don't have to be stuck in there. That's the fear.
That's the fear.
And now I'm doing it, and now I'm living it. And it's the most amazing feeling because I'm helping other people.
It's like, again, it's like you said at the beginning, it's like learning to run the marathon, but learning how to walk first. And now look at where we're at. I love that. I think that's probably the key here, listeners, is knowing that this stuff doesn't happen overnight. If it does, those are too drastic of changes and they won't last, will they?
Yeah. Well, if you finish a marathon, how far did you go?
Yeah, 26.2 miles.
So if it takes you 2 hours or just under 2 hours, or if it takes you 3 hours and 29 minutes, or if it takes you 24 hours, do you accomplish the same distance?
100%.
You do. You still
26.2.
The pace doesn't matter. Forward is a pace.
Yeah.
Right? Forward's a pace. And stop comparing ourselves to everybody else. We don't have the same experiences. We don't have the same shared traumas.
Yeah.
And we compare ourselves to everybody else thinking like, oh, well, I'm not as good as them, or I'm not as far along as that person. but that person doesn't have the same experience as I do. Right?
Absolutely.
And you have to start somewhere, and it's forward. Go forward. Forward is a pace.
I love it. I talk about it all the time. When people come in and they're full of self-doubt, I'll say like, well, if I asked you to go out and run a marathon with me, would you do it? Right. And they're always like, no, not really. And I'm like, what if there was 10 grand at the end? It doesn't matter how long, but you just finish it.
You find a way.
Well, maybe. All right. What if there was $1 million? It's all yours. Well, let's go. What are we
I'm
waiting for?
running out the door right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's motivated by something. We got to find out what that is for you. Self-doubt is not motivating.
Mm-mm.
It's just not. There's nothing motivating about self-doubt. So in order to combat
It's
that,
motivating
do
you
it.
to stay stuck.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's it, right?
Mhm.
Self-doubt, it's shame, motivation. It's kind of funny how these all kind of rotate together. But that's kind of the I don't know, that's kind of the deep dive. I think that's kind of the thing we want to leave with you this week. Wendell, appreciate your input, man. Like it's wild when we talk about this kind of stuff, because I'm still kind of blown away that we can get into these kind of things. And I know that it helps you, the listeners out there, because I've seen some of your feedback. So we invite you to do so. Jump on the school app. You can find the resources below. Wendell and I will be putting together more content for that specific classroom on the school app. It's free. Why not jump on there?
Yeah.
We're not a bunch of like online course bros where you got to pay $6,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing that we'd ever charge is if you needed our personal time, and that's for specific reasons. But for what we're doing, it's for you. You'd be foolish not to take advantage of it. So jump on there, get on the school app, and reach out to us. We're going to be doing another Q&A here soon. I'm glad we have some archived podcasts here, because I won't be here next week, Wendell, but we'll keep at it. Listeners, the goal here is to do your best to become one of us, an agent of your recovery. And for all of you watching on Facebook and the YouTube, we thank you for participating and hanging out.